CEO, Aussie Media, Carlos Watson.
Good afternoon. I'm not going to take it personally. That was a little bit of a tepid response. You guys having a good time here or what? All right. So I've got a few cousins in the audience, which is good. I'm Carlos Watson, and more than being the one of the co-founders of Aussie, I'm really a proud part of the GSV ASU family, if Deborah and Michael will let me call it that. How many of you were here 10 years ago, or even 8, 9 years ago when this was just getting started? Let me see a show of hands for some of the early folks. What a big hand for Deborah and Michael and the team, huh? It's amazing what they've managed to do. I tell them every time, not only do I think the programming is so strong, but just the vibe and the good energy and the number of good people you meet, the number of casual conversations you have, I think really distinguish it as probably one of the very best conferences I've gotten a chance to go to. I'm really pleased to be here today. What a fun conversation. 2 old friends. They've known each other for years, and I've known them both a little bit. Karl, Rove, and James Carville are among the most successful political advisors and campaign managers in modern political histories. They're both also true political junkies. One grew up primarily in Utah with a little bit of Nevada thrown in there, and another is very famously a raging Cajun, so neither come from the coast. But both have incredible insight, and I think we're in such an interesting moment in our politics here. I can't think of 2 better people to join us to talk about it a little bit. So let me invite to the stage former Student Council President, Karl Rove. Where are you? And James Carville, lest you forget, former teacher and member of the Marines. So welcome to both these guys. And then I'm going to move them aside. Karl, I'm supposed to sit over there where you are, but that's okay. We'll dance a little bit here.
They told me to sit in the middle. At least I got that right.
Are you calling him an extremist?
In a nice way.
In a nice way.
Guys, we're going to get right into it. We were already talking about it back there. 2020, James, more interesting. Will it be a more interesting presidential campaign than 2016 or even 2008, given that we've seen 2 of the best, or even 2000?
I don't. Right now, I would describe, as a Democrat, I would describe my mood as scared to death. All right? I don't know if it's exciting, but if you're watching something that you've been a part of your whole life, and it shows some evidence that it's trying to commit suicide, it's kind of concerning, you know?
Oh, so you think the Democrats have the wrong approach to this thing?
Yeah. I mean, I shouldn't say, I think that the House, the congressional Democrats, I think Pelosi totally has the right approach. I think 90% of the freshman class has the right approach, but they're not making all the noise.
You're not giving AOC any love then?
Well, I don't give a love or not love. She's not, first of all, somebody needs to read the Constitution of the Democratic Socialists of America, because I make my students read that. And they talk about public control of resources and production. So under AOC's regime, somebody's going to decide how many books we publish or how many Ford F-150 pickups we make. And the truth of the matter is she does not represent the rank and file of Democrats across the country, but she's getting, and she's very savvy on social media and everything else, and she's got some really smart people around her. But it's not just AOC, it's the whole way that they just keep moving and moving without anything behind them. And it's going to be interesting to see who comes in. Like 18, what are you saying, Carl? 18 people without even counting Mayor Pete right now?
Yeah,
I mean,
18 Democrats.
It's going to be, who knows what it's going to produce. Hopefully it'll produce something good, but I don't know that.
But you're not sure. Karl, if you were on the other side of this, who would you be most worried about among either the announced or the not yet announced candidates?
Well, who would I be worried about what? Winning? Yeah,
Who
but-
do you think's the strongest
Well,
contender?
look, right now, and this is really premature. I mean, we got several geological ages to go through before we get to this. I mean, the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, Jurassic, Permian. But look, Biden has some strength. And I wrote my column about it last week in the Journal because I thought people were underrating him, sort of like, undervaluing a stock. But I think more than any individual candidate, it's there are two conflicting things going on inside the Democratic Party. We want to win, and we want to, have somebody who truly reflects our fervent beliefs. And James is right. 32 Democrats in the House were elected from districts where there was a Republican congressman and the districts were carried by Donald Trump. And they were by and large less liberal, more centrist. But nobody's hearing from them. Everybody's hearing from the noisy left. And Bernie is pulling the party to the left. So the tension is going to be between, do we want to win, or do we want to have somebody who is for AOC and Green New Deal and free college and the guaranteed, federal job and the basic income and the elimination of the electoral college and all kinds of goofy things.
You're saying a compassionate conservative.
What he's saying.
I'm a compassionate conservative because I hate to see this happening to the Democrats.
Right, I hate it worse than you. I'll tell you how bad it is. And Karl will know this. One of my favorite Democrats in the cycle was Colin Elliott, who ran a North Dallas seat. Colin is an African-American, played football at Baylor, played in the NFL, was like a civil rights lawyer. He beat Pete Sessions in conversation. Well, President Bush, George W. Bush lives in his district. So after the election, he asked the president if he could go by and have a cup of coffee with him, and the president said, fine. And they started attacking him for that. That he's not liberal enough that he went and had coffee with a former president who was actually one of his constituents. Which seems to me like a thing that a polite person would do if they just get elected to Congress and you have an ex-president in there. You'd say, sir, what advice you have, but just to be nice and sociable. That's the way people in most of the country are. Most of the people in the country are actually kind of nice to each other.
Well, all right, so keep going with this then, James. Is this, in your mind, so you think the Democrats are at risk of committing suicide? Is this the first time you've seen in modern times Democrats do this, or does this remind you of another race? Is this 84? Is this 88?
No.
Is this 72? No. Where are you on this?
This is not, look, hopefully they won't, but some people are determined. And by the way, there's a large part of the there's a part of the Democratic Party that don't want to win. They just want to lose and raise money and raise hell. And so they don't really care. You got to understand that. But they do have the power of drawing a lot of attention to themselves and drawing people into positions. You're not going to get rid of the Electoral College. What are you talking about? It's a stupid conversation. You're not going to get rid of the Senate. It's a stupid conversation. There's going to be no reparations. It's a stupid conversation. It's not going to happen. Why not talk about things that can happen? Like we can expand health care. We can do something about climate. We can do something about corruption. We can do something about schools. And we're having this stupid, irrelevant conversation that is nothing but a bunch of people sitting around in a corner thinking who can come with another pie-in-the-sky idea that's better than the last pie-in-the-sky idea. And I think it's a dangerous thing for a political party, particularly a party that has traditionally prided themselves as being expansive and open and ready to accept new people. It concerns me a great deal.
All right, let me push you for 1 second here. So we saw a really interesting race down in Georgia, a state that President Trump won by almost 10 points, where Stacey Abrams, the state legislative House Minority Leader, came within a whisper of beating the Republicans. Some would argue, there were issues going on down there. And part of her argument was run to the left, energize the base, have new people show up. People had doubts about whether or not that could work, but she won the primary making that argument and almost won the general. So if they come back to you and they push you and they say, completely hear you and know that the country as a whole may be more centrist than we're representing, but to really get the kind of turnout that Secretary Clinton was not able to get in 2016, we're doing the right thing. What do you say to that?
I'll say, first of all, she did get a massive turnout. So did the Republicans. No, we went base to base. Every off year is, well, Carl, I'll tell you what, it's all about turnout Tuesday. If you can get your people out better than ours, and you're going to win, or we get our people out and we're going to win, it's all the base, it's all about turnout. Well, guess what in 2018? We turned out, they turned out like crazy. What the suburbs was the big breakthrough for the Democrats. Literally every seat we picked up was a suburban seat. There's not a Republican left in Orange County, California. Look at the north side of Collins seat, the west side of Houston. And so what we've done is they turned out. Look what happened in Wisconsin special in the Supreme Court. We turned them out. And so, and one thing about Stacey Abrams as compared to some of the other people, like, she's a very serious person. I mean, she was a very effective minority leader. She's thoughtful. She's not like the AOC I mean, she's a person of some substance. And it's not just ideological. It's the way that you can carry a message, or it's what you can say. So I don't have but she doesn't go and take all of these. She's very careful about how far she gets out there on something. And stylistically, I mean, Stacey is a smart person, you know, who's substantive and has probably got a career going forward in American politics.
Karl, you hear the audience when James went in on AOC there, and what if those in the audience
was it in a Joe Biden-like way that he went in on her? I'm just trying to figure.
Okay, you know what? This is going to be a colorful conversation. All right, okay, but that's good. The people need it. It's lunchtime. We need a little color. It's okay. So, but what if someone in the audience said, and they said what they said lovingly to James? They said, what James is not getting is that there's a generational shift going on, and that Mayor Pete and AOC and the Congresswoman from Detroit and a whole series of other people are part of a generational shift, and whether he likes it or not, there's there's movement in our economy, there's movement in our society, there's movement in our entertainment, and there's also now movement in our politics. And so that it may be tough for some to hear that, but that is part of what's going on.
There is a generational shift going on, but the generational shift is Colin Allred in Dallas versus AOC. Okay. It is Oman in Minneapolis versus Mickey Sherrill in New Jersey. And so the choice for the Democrats is going to be are we going to Corbynize the Democratic Party and move so far out of the mainstream? James is right. The 2018 midterm election, if you were a white, college-educated suburbanite, particularly a woman, you said, okay, the economy's good. I sort of like the tax cuts. I may have agreed with Brett Kavanaugh, but I hate what Trump is doing. And I got one way to send him a message, and it's to vote for a Democrat for Congress. And incidentally, I got a Democrat who sounds reasonably sensible. You take that voter and then say, okay, your choice is free college, end of of private health insurance, government is in charge of your health care, universal basic wage, abolition of the electoral college, blah, blah, reparation, blah, 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 blah. Suddenly, you're going to lose that person. The 2020 presidential election is going to be decided by suburban, college-educated, particularly women, but also men. And the question is going to be, do the Democrats nominate somebody who says, my job is to hold them in my party's coalition that we had in 2018, or somebody who says, you know what, the answer to this is the more pure we are, the further out we are on the left, the more enthusiastic our base is going to be, and we're going to bring to the polls a lot of people who have previously not voted. Look, that may have worked for the midterm because Democratic animosity to Trump was up here, and the Trump voter a lot of Trump voters are sort of like, I'm going to vote for Trump, but I'm not really excited about the midterms. Brett Kavanaugh and the way that was handled evened that up some, but nonetheless, the Democrats were more enthusiastic about turning down the midterms than they did. And the Democrats, you make a big mistake if you build your general election presidential year strategy around what happened in the last midterm.
Make a point. Listen, I want just one fact. 18% of the country elects 50% of the United States Senate. So if people are saying the Democratic Party is part of the urban, hip, educated, diverse, cool generation, you're telling people all over the country you're not part of our frat. We're cooler than you. We're more visionary than you and everything else. And by the way, we got to run Senate races in 2020 in North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, Colorado, Montana, Iowa, Kentucky, Maine. I'm forgetting somewhere along the way. And you're not going to win that with an urban coalition. It's not going to happen. And the purpose of a political party is to win elections. Because if you don't win, you got nothing.
James,
that's all you know.
James, question to you. Is all of this moot because did the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, did he win re-election when Barr and Mueller issued the report? I mean, in other words,
No.
are Democrats hoping, but the reality is it's over?
Well, I mean, look, every Democrat hopes something, but, you know, I was in the Marine Corps right up here at MCRD. You know what they tell you?
What's that?
Wish in one hand and crap in the other. See which one fills up the fastest.
Hey, how many of you guys have missed James? How many of you guys have missed James?
I mean, the purpose, right now, look, I'm just putting it blunt. The country doesn't want to re-elect Trump. It's evident from everything that you see. However, it can be talked. It can't be talked into re-electing Trump, but it can be talked out of voting for a Democrat, and it doesn't matter. And the party has a chance to consolidate gains because these suburbanites that voted for us in the north side of Dallas, they're not a Democrat like I am. They're not. They are triers. You can chase them off in 2 seconds. And we gotta stop getting beat. If you go and look at the returns, and Karl will verify this, we get beat 85-15 in these rural counties. If you just got beat 75-25 in the Texas Panhandle, you'd win. Little things in North Florida, little things produce big results in American politics. And majoritarian parties, or parties that seek to be a majoritarian party, are looking for these things to exploit, as opposed to trying to reinforce our hip, cool, urban Hollywood, Manhattan, I don't know what.
Talking about cow flatulence in the Green New Deal is not helping them in the Panhandle of Texas. Let me just tell you, not happening. And look, we've had this fun in the Republican Party with a faction that came in 2010 and said, we're going to, unless you do it our way, it's our way or the highway, and held us hostage on a lot of things. Happening now in the Democratic Party. Democrats said, we're going to govern. We now control the House. We're going to pass a budget resolution. And they tried to this week. And what happened is they said, okay, we're going to plus, where the budget resolution allows for money for defense to go up, but a lot more money for social services. And the Progressive Caucus, led by AOC and others, said, wait a minute, you're spending too much on defense and you're not spending enough on social service. We've got a very expensive list of new things we want to do. And as a result, Nancy Pelosi has to pull down the budget resolution. And the House will not pass a budget resolution. Now, in the greater scheme of things, that may not be a big thing to the American voters, but it's a sign of the power of that clique within inside the Democratic Party.
All right, Karl, I'm going to turn the page, Karl and James, just for a second, to President Trump. Karl, make the argument that Trump is one of the 2 or 3 most talented politicians of the last 50 years.
Well, he got elected. Now, admittedly, he was helped by the fact that Democrats nominated the one person on the planet who could lose to him, and they did. But look, he has an instinctive sense of his base, and he has an instinctive sense of how to dominate the public stage. The problem is that may not be enough. You know, he got 46% of the vote. 38% of that said, or 37% said, I like Donald Trump. I think he's qualified. I think he has the temperament. I think he has the background. He's an agent of change, and I'm voting for him. And 9% said, I don't think he's qualified at all. We had nearly 1 out of every 5 voters said, I don't think either one of these people is qualified. Next biggest number that I can find of that question in the exit polls is 3%. So we had a large number of people who are turned off by both. And those people voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly. And what happened is they said, I don't like him, he's not qualified, he's not experienced, but he's an agent of change, and I'm voting for him because I hate her. Now, to duplicate that, he's got to get a little bit better on the I'm doing things that matter to you. And what amazes me is the economy is doing pretty good. 58% approve of his handling the economy, and in the latest CNN poll, 71% think the economy, for their personal circumstances, is good or very good. And yet, he spends his time chasing other things rather than being focused on that. And and on doing things that the moments that we've seen him where he looks, quote, presidential, he goes to the summit in Korea, or excuse me, in Singapore with North Korea, you know, he helps himself, but he doesn't stay focused on those things.
James, is he talented? I mean, you famously, both in the 91 Senate race and in 92, said it's the economy stupid.
Right.
And here, as Karl is saying, you know, we always could be better, but historically, this is a pretty good economy still. So, you know.
Well, let me start off. First of all, he started out with a pretty good economy. All right, if you just go look at GDP growth the quarters before he was president, after president, not a whole lot different. Could you imagine what done in 1997 if Clinton would have stuck $1 trillion worth of stimulus in that economy? Of course it would take off. I mean, that's what they did. They had a pretty good economy, and they just stuck a bunch of things. And now everybody say, well, it's all worn off now. We got $1 trillion debt, and we kind of back to 2016. But it was a pretty good economy during 2018, and they lost. He has a talent for figuring out what certain people are thinking and then saying it. And that is a good talent in politics. However, I think there's something wrong with him. I mean, there's a story today, and I'm not making this up. I want you to understand this, that he was with the French president at Mount Vernon and said Washington would have been better known if he'd have named it after himself. Yeah, George Washington has a branding problem. You don't know who he is. If he'd have named the house after him, you would know who he was. Forget Washington, D.C., or Washington State, or Washington University, or George Washington University, or George Washington Bridge, or George Washington on a dollar bill. Trump knew how to market somebody. There's a man that needs some help in marketing. He said that honestly. And he said he didn't build the rooms right. He says, I could have built them bigger and cheaper. But you didn't have 1750 labor, I guess, but what the hell? I'm not making it up. I know you think. No,
we got it. Of course, this is from the guy who's from Carville, Louisiana, where they have the leprosy hospital?
Yeah, and we knew who George Washington was.
Yeah, exactly. Now, can I say something, though, on the economy? Look, first of all, I remember all those smart people in the Obama administration who mocked Trump for saying 3% economic growth. Larry Summers said, fairy tale. Well, we've had 3% growth 2 years in a row. And the interesting thing to me, and this may give him a wind, is that in the Obama era, we were seeing, for example, the 5 years ending in 2016, if you were a working guy, your supervisor was getting pay raises, you were getting pay raises, but the pay raises for the supervisor were 40% bigger than those going to the working person. Since 17 and 18, we're now at basically where the working people are getting pay raises that are 25% more than their supervisors. That's because we're getting in a place where we're running out of labor and the market is adjusting by saying we're going to bid for you. Now, if this this has something to do with what Trump has done on energy and deregulation and so forth, but a large part of it is that he just gave the economy has gotten up to 3% growth. If that continues, then all this stuff about income inequality and it's the worst economy ever and capitalism is racist and all these things that some of these candidates are letting themselves say. Robert Francis O'Rourke is one of the most reckless people I've ever seen in politics, and for him to go out and just sort of excoriate, I'm a capitalist, but it's racist and bigoted and blah, 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 blah. That's not going to sell. This is, again, the fundamental problem that Democrats have going into 2020.
All right, talk to me about, in your mind, James, we have a big field on the Democratic side. Which two or three of the candidates stands out to you?
Well, the one that's getting the attention is Mayor Pete. And I do this little political podcast, and I had him on the show. And I'm going to tell you a story in the form of a question, and you're going to know exactly where this is going. So in 1956, Earl Long was twice the governor of Louisiana, was running. And, of course, Earl had been roughed up and probably had a few compromises and some campaign contributions along the way. And a guy was running against him by the name of Fred Preuss, who was a Ford dealer from a town called Farmerville, Louisiana, which is about 10 miles from the Arkansas border. And everything you think Fred Preuss is, he was. So Earl Long says, tell you something about Fred Preuss. He's a fine Christian gentleman. And if I had to buy a Ford, I would buy that Ford from Fred Preuss. I'm going to tell you why. He's going to give you a good deal, And better yet, if you need maintenance or something goes wrong, you take it in, he's going to give you a loaner because he's that kind of guy. However, if I had 2 Fords, I'd go somewhere else. He's big enough to handle the deal. I mean, the question is, are we really thinking about going from being mayor of South Bend to president of the United States? I mean, that's the question.
Yep.
And the guy's interesting. He speaks 7 languages. He's almost a scholar of St. Augustine. I mean, he's a very deep guy. He reads Norwegian novels. He's very affable, nice, interesting guy. But I got to tell you, I think Karl will verify this because he's been there. That's one hard-ass job. Let me tell you, it's a really, really, really tough job.
Now, what do you say to him and his supporters? And I know I'm poking, but what do you say to him and his supporters who remember in 1992 when there was a young governor from Arkansas,
Right.
Ross Perot said, I mean, governor of Arkansas is
Right.
less impressive than running a
Right.
Walmart.
But
right?
first of all, Bill Clinton was 6 times governor of Arkansas. He was president of the Governors Association. He had a policy group that he had been around forever. He had been involved in a lot of things. And still, he had to answer. Yeah, he got attacked for it. And we went out and did, as you recall, we did foreign policy speeches and that kind of stuff. I mean, we're aware that was an issue, but being 6-time governor of Arkansas is a little tougher than being a mayor of South Bend. I'm not saying he can't overcome this, but it's a question as he moves forward and becomes, as opposed to being interesting, becomes credible. Then those are the kind of questions that are very legitimately going to be asked of him. I asked of him in my interview.
Don't let people know that I've done this, but let me defend Bill Clinton.
Texas.
Hillary's the most qualified person to run for president in the history of our country, more qualified than me. But look, there is a difference between being the mayor of a town of 102,000 and being the successful governor of Arkansas, a place with about 2.2 million people back when he was there. And he was a leader on education and welfare reform and a number of issues. So, and a leader of the Democratic Leadership Council, he came with a new message. If we want to, after Dukakis and Mondale, if we want to win, we've got to be in the center of American politics. And then there was this crazy guy who was advising him who said, it's the economy, stupid. And so there's a big difference between that. I look at it, I was at Fox recently, Fox News Sunday, and we had Mayor Pete on. Of course, he came up to me and insulted me by saying, you were so kind to me when I was at the Institute of Politics, and you were so nice to me and took my question. And I thought to myself, God, that was 10 years ago, and you look 18, and how old am I? And he is very impressive personally, but I think it's a sign of how quickly our politics has gotten into celebrityhood. I mean, every election tends to be a reaction to the last election. We elected the guy who had no governmental experience. And are we going to elect another guy whose governmental experience extends to being the chief executive of a town with 102,000 people in a nation of 335 million people? I don't think so. And I think it's a sign, though, of how quickly our media and our social media and the sort of political environment in which we find ourselves, it's sort of like, oh, something new and novel. It's the same with AOC. I mean, please. I mean, I listened to her the other day, and I tried to make sense of what the hell she was saying. And I mean, like, I'm trying to be generous to her. I mean, it's like blah, 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 blah. And the Democrats have got some very able people there. But we somehow or another sort of look for the bright, new, shiny thing.
It's called, look, they always say, Republicans fall in line, Democrats fall in love. But I think a lot of Democrats now are looking to fall in line.
All right, talk to me about a couple of the other candidates. I want quick answers, reactions from both of you. Bernie Sanders.
I don't like him. and I'm going to tell you,
are you holding
we're gonna
2016
see, I'm not
against
holding
him?
back. And I'm telling you, you're going to see that I've been around Louisiana politics, and this guy, he has a unique relationship with money. And you're going to see that become an issue as we go forward.
All right, we're going to start scrapping. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
No, I'm not
look,
scrapping.
I hate to say it, but I'm in agreement with him. I don't like him, and there's some weirdness with this college that his wife was the head of, and there's other weird stuff out there. And look, think about it. The Democrats, it's going to be hard if he is number one on the list. On the one hand, it's going to be hard for them to nominate him. If he comes out of all of this primary with the 41% that he had last time around in a two-person race, if he comes out with 41% in what ultimately is a 4 or 5-person race, it's going to be hard to deny him the nomination.
Would Bernie have beaten candidate Trump?
Exactly right.
Would he have beaten candidate Trump in 2016?
No. This is not a socialist country. All right? But I'm not. The problem is we have these. The Republicans are so much smarter the way they do it. You win a state, you win a vote. We have proportional representation. Well, he's got a firm 25%, and that may be enough that people can't challenge him, and he sticks around and sticks around. And now, the Democrats are always moaning and groaning about money in politics. So what do? They moved the California primary up to March the 3rd. Well, if you're worried about money in politics, California is a kind of expensive place to run it.
Yeah. James is right. Democrats always feel obligated to change their rules.
They do.
And so this time around, they got 3 rules changes. One is they're going to begin sort of late, February 1st, which is a good idea. You don't like running the Iowa caucuses in the aftermath of New Year. But they have also moved up the primary season. Last time around, 24% of the delegates were elected in the first month. This time around, we're on the verge of having 48% of the Democratic delegates elected between the 1st of February and the 3rd of March. And that includes states like Texas and Texas and California. And James is right, they're proportional. Marco Rubio gets 17.7% of the primary vote in the Texas 2016 primary and gets 3 of 155 delegates. On the Democratic side, you get 15%, you automatically get delegates. So if you've got 4 candidates who are, say, at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, they all get roughly 20, 21% of the delegates. And so then they had the final change is my personal favorite. They say they're the Democratic Party, but they got the House of Lords, which is the superdelegates. A pal of ours is Donna Brazil. I said, Donna, you're a superdelegate. How did that happen? She said, I lost to you. She said, as a reward for losing in 2000, running the Gore campaign, they made me a superdelegate. I said, well, how do you stop being a superdelegate? She says, you either need to die or resign, and I don't intend to do either, so I'm going to be a superdelegate forever. Well, this time around, they said they cannot vote on the first ballot, but they can vote on the second. So what happens if they go to Milwaukee and nobody has a majority on the first ballot, and bam, 775 superdelegates come roaring onto the field on number 2. Now, how many of them are going to be for Bernie? I don't think a lot of them. And so this could be just one hell of a convention. First since 1952 on the Democratic side that goes to multiple ballots. And imagine again, if whoever is leading, they got 39% of the delegates and number 2 has 36, and they take number 36% and make them the nominee. Woo, baby!
But let's admit that there's another scenario here. Okay. And that is somebody really has real talent and they exhibit and they stand on that stage. And they command the stage, and people say, hey, I like her, or I like him. And they really command. I'm waiting for the one mighty and strong. You don't know. When we started in 92, it was a governor of a failed state, or, et cetera, et cetera. Then you saw that there was some real, talent here. That's the idea. I'm hoping that's what we see, and I'm in my angst. Yep. You have to admit there's a good way this could end. However, the Democrats are stupid. They write party nomination rules to be fair. You don't write them to be fair. You write them to help your party win the election. It's your party. You get to do with it what you want. All right?
I've already run out of time, so I got to hear from you. Talk to me about the senator from California. You talked about March 3rd already. Talk to me about Senator Kamala Harris, former prosecutor. You excited? You not excited? Does she feel like that person of substance that can command the stage?
I could get excited. Okay.
All
right? But I've seen her. I watch everything she does because I think she is compelling. But she needs to her policy stuff needs to be filled out a little bit more. She's more aspirational, and I don't think you got to be a total
Where are you on Carl's friend Beto?
Robert Francis.
Look, what he did was amazing. You can't take that away. The amount of money he did, the amount of energy he created and everything. But he's got it. You can't, if you asked about Syria, you can't say, well, I've only been in Congress for 3 terms.
Klobuchar.
Could be. Could be.
So that's the strongest reaction I've gotten from you so far.
Well, I don't mean, I'm watching everybody.
Yeah.
I watch every interview. And I want to fall in love, but I haven't done it yet. But I'm looking.
You better tell
I'm looking.
Mary that, incidentally. You better tell Mary. Just warn her.
I don't think she's worried about Mayor Pete.
Yeah. Don't go any further. No further. That's it. Right there. You know, I think James is pointing to what this election, one of the big things about this election, why it's going to be so interesting. How candidates conduct themselves every single day, and how, particularly in the general election, they conduct themselves, is going to be critical almost beyond any election we've been in, because there are going to be so many different paths not to win, and they're going to have to create a path to win. I was very impressed with Senator Harris's announcement. Has a huge crowd and sort of does the Barack Obama Springfield thing, goes to Oakland, huge crowd, but it's like, since then. Elizabeth Warren, the good news for her is Elizabeth Warren is like this. I mean, a Warren who, you know, had the benefit of having come off a huge Senate campaign, raises about the same amount of money that Harris does, who, you know, whose election was before and hadn't had the national prominence.
All right, Karl, they're giving me the pull sign here. So final word, if you had to bet, understanding that there's several geological ages between here and magic, who are you going to put your money on? Who's going to be the Democratic nominee? Who you put?
I got to give two.
Okay, give me two.
Okay, Biden, if Biden comes out strong and has discipline and is focused, then he could win and he could be a real threat. Absent that, it's going to be Bernie or somebody else of that ilk, in which case the Democrats have made the chance of removing Trump very, very difficult to do.
James, third-party candidate, serious third-party candidate?
No,
or no?
no, please.
Not, but
Please.
it could get in the future, depending on what the Democrats do.
In the future, as in 2024?
Or some out there.
Corbin,
But we're not talking about this year,
Yeah.
unless something happens on one team. Look, 18% of the country has a negative opinion of both parties. Mike Bloomberg looked at this thing every way you could look at it, everything you could, and just concluded it just can't be done. It's just not, there are just too many people in the country that are going to vote for the Democrat, and too many people in the country vote for the Republican, and it's just not enough there to win the election.
You served up for me the perfect question. One of my favorite political books, What It Takes.
That's a goal. The best ever.
Terrific.
And he was a great guy, too.
Terrific book, 1988. If you guys haven't read it, they follow about a dozen plus candidates, ask the question over 800 pages.
Richard Ben Kramer is the
It's a
author.
shame
Ben
he put on
Kramer.
that 88 campaign.
Ask the question, what does it take to become president? What's your answer to that question? What does it take to become president? And then, Karl, you get the final word. Same question.
First of all, it takes a lot of stamina. A whole lot. And the ability to perform under pressure and when you're terribly fatigued. Secondly, and most importantly, it takes the ability to communicate with people. And I don't just mean, St. Francis told his disciples, he says, go forth and teach the gospel, speak if necessary. And I think in this era, the way that you conduct yourself matters a lot. How you speak with confidence, that kind of stuff. How you can really, look at one of your opponents in the face and smile, and when they're not looking, you stab them right in the stomach, and they never know they got stabbed. Where it takes some political skill, where you're just not out bludgeoning everybody. And you communicate that, and you tell people also are kind of interested that you can win. So it's okay to talk about how you're going to do that, too. That's actually a matter of some concern out there.
You're getting us ready for Game of Thrones this Sunday. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Karl, finish this out.
I'd add to James, first of all, we think of this as artifice. The candidate, we put up a cute TV ad and confuse everybody, and somehow or another the masses are asses and they'll follow you. It's really more like running for president is like the emperor's new clothes. And they're going to see you at the end of the parade, sort of buck naked, and the question is, are they going to sort of compare you to the other person in the race and say, you know what, strengths and weaknesses each one, but this one is better. So authenticity is going to matter a lot. A sense of your values, particularly are they in sync with people, is really, really important. And then thirdly, do they have a sense that you have what it takes to do that job more than the person whom you're running against? Because none of this happens in a vacuum. And elections, the partisans on each side are affected with regard to turnout. Am I enthusiastic about the person who has the letter that I carry after my name? But the elections are decided by a group of people who can decide whether I'm going to vote or not vote. And if I vote, I've got some pliability in whether I'm willing to vote for them or them. And what James outlined and what these other things that I've just touched on, that's the group that's got to be affected by it.
So I got an idea. Let's get some T-shirts made, put them, and give them to everybody. I saw James Carl and Karl Rove, and they didn't even fight with each other.
Hey guys, a big hand up for two of our favorite people.